Hyponatremia can occur when there is an increased amount of free water in the system, which occurs because of dilutional hyponatremia, where overzealous fluids have been supplemented, or overhydration by drinking more amount of free water. The management is conservative because renal excretion of free water gets the sodium value back to normal. Hyponatremia can occur even in the euvolemic state when there is a hyperosmolar situation. There is hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia or hyperproteinemia, which will tend to absorb more amount of free water from the other compartments. By virtue of this, there is a relative reduction of sodium. Hypovolemic hyponatremia occurs when there is excessive GI loss in the form of diarrhea or excessive renal losses. The formula for correction of hyponatremia. This portion calculates the total body water in liters, and this portion calculates the sodium deficit per liter. 1 liter of normal saline has 154 milliequivalents of sodium, and 3% saline has 513 milliequivalents of sodium per liter. For a 100 kilogram individual with a sodium level of 119, the deficit is 1500 milliequivalents, of which one would correct 750 milliequivalents only. Likewise, for a 100 kilo individual with a sodium level of 123, the deficit is 1260 milliequivalents, and one would correct 630 milliequivalents per day. The brain adapts to the change of osmolarity by using osmolytes such as inositol and glutamine. During a change in osmolarity, the brain cells can either shrink or expand by using the osmolytes. During a rapid correction of hyponatremia, there is a shrinking of the swollen cells mainly seen in the pons, which can lead to central pontine myelinolysis, leading to paralysis, dysphagia and dysarthria. To prevent central pontine myelinolysis, one would correct hypernatremia very slowly so that there is a reduction of 10 millimoles of sodium per liter per day. In a 30-year-old individual having a body weight of 70 kilograms and sodium of 165, we calculate the total body water by taking 60% of the body weight. Therefore, it is 42 liters. We would like to add free water, therefore we use 5% dextrose without any sodium. So the difference of the serum sodium and the infusate sodium is 165 minus 0. We divide that by the total body water and we add 1 liter for 1 liter of 5% dextrose. That means to say we can reduce the sodium by 3.83 millimoles per liter. Now we would want a reduction of 10 millimoles in 24 hours. Therefore 10 divided by 3.83 would give us 2.6 liters, which we can infuse of 5% dextrose. Remember that the patient will lose 1 liter of water in the urine. Therefore, we can freely infuse 3.6 liters per 24 hours at a rate of 150 ml per hour to get a target loss of 10 millimoles of sodium reduction per liter. The normal daily intake of potassium is 50 to 100 milliequivalents. The daily excretion can be from 10 milliequivalents to up to 700 milliequivalents if there is a good renal function. During the depolarization, the sodium-potassium pump takes potassium inside the cell, and this depolarization is very important for cardiac and neuromuscular activity so that the next wave of action potential can proceed. Potassium and magnesium are mainly intracellular. Hyperkalemia can occur due to increased oral or IV supplementation, blood transfusion, or rhabdomyolysis or hemolysis. It could also occur because of increased release of potassium in hyperosmolar states and acidity. It occurs also during reduced excretion due to kidney disorders and potassium-sparing diuretics. Hypokalemia is seen due to reduced oral or IV supplementation when a person is on TPN or IV fluids, due to increased gastrointestinal losses from diarrhea or renal losses. It also occurs when there is an increased potassium excretion, which occurs during hyperaldosteronemia. The action potential is a wave of depolarization followed by a wave of repolarization. During the depolarization, there is an influx of sodium with an efflux of potassium. The sodium-potassium pump reverses this phenomenon. During hyperkalemia, there is excessive potassium outside the cell. There is a reduced cardiac excitability and in addition, a reduced impulse generation and conduction. In ECG, this leads to a peaked T wave seen initially, followed later by a flattening of the P wave and prolongation of the QRS complex. In the pre-terminal stages, one can see a sine wave, and at times there is even a ventricular fibrillation. The correction of mild hyperkalemia is done by beta-2 agonist nebulization, which stimulates the sodium-potassium pump, driving potassium in the cell. The second measure is the insulin dextrose drip. Insulin drives the potassium into the cell, and dextrose prevents hypoglycemia. Soda bicarb can be given in cases of acidosis. In moderate hyperkalemia, potassium binding resins given by the oral or rectal route may be helpful. In life-threatening hyperkalemia, calcium gluconate is used to increase the force of cardiac contraction. In chronic hyperkalemia, hemodialysis is an excellent option. Hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia, and alkalosis are coexistent. For every increase of pH of 0.1 above normal causing alkalosis, there is a drop of potassium of 0.3 milliequivalents per liter. This hypokalemia can increase the excitability of the cells, causing re-entrant arrhythmias. Initially there is a U wave, followed by a flattened T wave, ST depression because of some degree of ischemia, and re-entrant arrhythmias. Since the potassium requirement is 60 milliequivalents per day, one would replace at least 80 milliequivalents over the period of 24 hours to prevent acute hyperkalemia. In the plasma, 50% of the calcium is free or ionized and it is metabolically active, whereas 45% or let's say 50% is protein bound to albumin and is biologically inert. Calcium binds to albumin for two reasons. It has a binding site and albumin is negative while calcium is positive. This explains when there is acidosis and increased H+ ion, it preferentially sticks to the albumin and calcium gets released, causing hypercalcemia. Since we understood that the ionized calcium, which is Ca2+, is metabolically active, when the pool of Ca2+ increases by calcium disassociating from albumin, now there is hypercalcemia in acidosis. When the albumin level is low, there is a higher percentage of serum calcium which is ionized. Therefore, although the total calcium may be low, the patient may not be metabolically hypocalcemic because there is a larger pool of Ca2+ in the plasma. The first part of the formula will calculate the amount of calcium which gets ionized when the albumin level is low. And then we add this to the already ionized calcium in the patient's plasma. Therefore, the ionized calcium of the patient along with the new ionized calcium will give the total amount of metabolically active calcium, which is the corrected calcium level. Potassium, magnesium and phosphates are largely intracellular. Therefore, hemolysis, rhabdomyolysis or crush injuries will increase levels of magnesium, phosphates and potassium. The calcium and potassium cannot be corrected without the correction of magnesium. To correct magnesium, usually one gives 2 grams of magnesium sulfate in 100 ml of normal saline over the period of 4 hours. Adenosine triphosphate is the energy currency of the cell. During refeeding syndrome, there is more amount of formation of ATP bonds and this leads to hypophosphatemia.